I have a timely resource for a very specific group of you. If you remember listening to episode 51, How to Use Your School Counseling Skills in Private Practice, you'll remember my friend and former colleague, Lorraine Holman. Lorraine set out to start her own private practice and now wants to teach you why you should and how to open your own viable private practice as a licensed professional counselor. Join Lorraine at a live 2-day virtual private practice workshop for school counselors. This 4.5-hour training will cover LPC licensure steps, private practice documentation essentials, developing your niche and ideal client, maximizing your profit, marketing for beginners, and essential mindset shifts from school counseling to private practice. You'll walk away from this workshop with the tools and confidence that you need to launch your private practice as a full-time or part-time option. Register today for this paid workshop. Space is limited to 15 school counselors and it costs $259. I'm a huge fan of Lorraine and the work that she's doing as an LPC supervisor and a former high school counseling department head. Head back to episode 51 to hear more about her story, but more importantly, if you have a tug to learn more about the practicalities of moving into private practice, I want you to head to counselorclick.com/private practice to learn more and sign up. That's counselorclick.com/private practice, and I hope you'll get to learn from Lorraine at the live workshops on June 7th and June 15th. So you've heard me mention the podcast playlist I made for new high school counselors. That has 15 episodes on it right now. I know it's a lot. So if you're ready for that deep dive before we even begin here in this episode, go to counselorclick.com/new counselor playlist. Get that Mac Daddy of what I'm referencing here. In this episode, I want to give you some sound bites, snippets, quick tips from those episodes and highlight my absolute faves. Because according to my Instagram stories, lots of you are either moving around from elementary or middle school to high school, or you're starting a new job right out of grad school and you're ready to dive into the world of high school counseling. So if you haven't gotten the job yet, you're first going to go to counselorclick.com/interview so I can send you a 3-video interview series to help you secure that new job. Then you're going to come back here to this episode. This episode is going to be your awesome stepping stone to the podcast playlist and then to the 8-episode audio course for new high school counselors called High School Counselor Kickstart. And then you're going to join the Click Collaborative membership if you want that continued support and PD. I'm just laying out the roadmap for you here. I want to share a screenshot from a new high school counselor, and I just wanted to read it here because it reminded me of why I do this podcast and what inspired this podcast episode. It's because of you, the listeners. It said, "I was just telling my supervisor about your podcast yesterday. It feels like it's my own personal PD, and it's so convenient and relevant. New high school counselor here. Thank you so much." If you ever have kind words about the podcast, I will not tell you to keep those to yourself. Send me a DM and let me know how it's helped you because it truly means the world to me. It's really energizing, and I love hearing from people who are listening, so it doesn't just feel like I'm talking to myself over here. I know this podcast can be especially helpful for new high school counselors who are entering the field, so though that may not be you in this season, I bet you know someone who could benefit from it. So if you're a veteran, go ahead and send this episode over to an intern or a grad student, and hopefully you can pass it along to someone else who would enjoy it. You got into this profession to make a difference in your students' lives, but you're spread thin by all of the things that keep getting added to your to-do list. I can't create more hours in the day, but I can invite you into my Counselor Click where you'll finally catch your breath. Come with me as we unpack creative ideas and effective strategies that'll help you be the counselor who leaves a lifelong impact on your students. I'm Lauren Tingle, your high school counseling hype girl, here to help you energize your school counseling program and remind you of how much you love your job. So let's get into it since you're short on time, but you're committed to this new role that you got or that you're about to get. People often ask, I got the job as a high school counselor. I'm so excited. What do I need? Listen, I'm not here to list out X, Y, Z and tell you you can't do your job without these. This episode that you need to listen to is the Back to School Office Prep episode. It's relevant for all high school counselors, but probably definitely you since you're prepping your office for the first time. You want to know what you need and what you don't need. You want to know what you're going to spend your money on and what's frivolous and that you don't need to spend money on. Here's an excerpt from that episode, and the reason why it's on my top listen to most episodes, you're going to hear it in this clip. Let's roll a clip from episode 32 where I talk about your physical office space and how to make it work functionally for you. Let's talk about your office first. You have to avoid the comparison game here. I love it. I love seeing pictures of everyone's offices, but it's really hard not to compare your office to others or idolize that perfect boho aesthetic or, whatever your style is. Everyone's situations are different. You see one picture and this person has a classroom size office. And then you look over here and that person has an office that's a closet size under the stairs like Harry Potter. When we're thinking about our office, think about this question. Is it a place that you can do counseling where you can provide a safe and confidential space for the students that you are working with? Check. Perfect. Great. If not, it's time to advocate for that space. I know that real estate in a school is sometimes really hard to come by, but you do need an appropriate space to do your job. This means no sharing an office with anyone, though I've wanted to do that with some counselor friends of mine, in theory, not actual practice. This means no hallway passing through the middle of your office for someone to get somewhere else. Like, you cannot have people walking through your office in the middle of a session. These things do not make sense for a counselor's office space. I also talk in this episode about moving into this space slowly and letting your day-to-day inform how you'll use the space, how you'll set it up, and how you'll pretty it up and enjoy every day that you're working in your office. Along these lines of what you need and what you don't need, I'm going to link 3 resources in the show notes that are great starter resources that are probably going to be the most helpful for you as a high school counselor when you're deciding where to start. So the first one I'm going to link is a planning mega bundle. This is good for all grade levels. It has a 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade component, has a presentation, and then a workbook style resource for your students. That's digital and printable. It's just kind of like that all-encompassing resource to get your feet wet, get you moving in the right direction with your students. It's called the Planning Mega Bundle. I'm also going to link a beginning of the year presentation to tell your people in your school, your admin and your teachers, what you do as a school counselor. You never know the state of affairs when you step into this role and what your role has looked like in this school before. So it's important that you set that standard right from the beginning. And then I'm going to link a bulletin board bundle because chances are you need to spruce those things up and give them some new life. So all of those resources are listed there. People often ask, what resources do I need when I start out as a new high school counselor? I'm not going to tell you there are ones that you have to have, but those 3 are some good ones to have in your back pocket when you start working in this job. Next, it's probably crossed your mind that high school counseling can feel really high stakes. And that's because it is. Maybe I'm biased because I'm obsessed with working in high school and my experience does not lie in middle school or elementary school. But high school counselors have a lot of pressure on them between graduation rates, college and career readiness factors, social emotional wellness, and mental health. We're launching young adult humans out into the real world. That does feel like a lot of pressure. You're probably aware that that pressure exists. And that's probably what's keeping you up at night. And that's why you're here listening to this podcast. So let me try to alleviate some of that. Let me first say, mistakes are bound to happen. You will not do this job perfectly. And others before you have made mistakes too. So I guarantee that you are also going to make mistakes. And that's scary. Episode 73 has some examples of mistakes that I've made and stressors that I felt the weight from. So let's normalize these mistakes by sharing this clip with you. First up, you will make mistakes. Some of these mistakes will be more stressful than others, like miscalculating credits needed for graduation or misplacing test booklets that need to get sent back to the College Board. You'll counsel a student and wish you took something back that you said, or wish you said something you didn't say to begin with. Yes, all of those things have caused moments of panic for me, but they did all work themselves out. The year I worked with 420 seniors was the most stressed I've been in my entire life. I've said it once and I'll say it again. I had checked and rechecked my seniors' graduation requirements and prayed each night that I didn't miss anything. I knew it was on them too, but I felt a lot of weight to get them across that stage. We talked about that pressure back in episode 71, where I talked with my old principal, Eric Williams. I've stayed at school late counting and recounting and wondering where I misplaced test booklets, all while cursing the day I got assigned test coordinator, frustrated because that didn't fall into my acceptable job responsibilities, according to ASCA. You'll reply all to an email to the whole staff and be embarrassed that you did that. You'll forget about a meeting that was on your calendar. You'll forget that you scheduled a meeting for Monday morning before school even starts, and you won't show up, but the parent will be there. You'll miss an important voicemail. You'll need an extension on a deadline. You'll upload first semester's transcript instead of second semester's. You'll fill out a form incorrectly. I'm telling you, there are so many mistakes that you can make in this job. It's really not if you make a mistake, it's when you make a mistake. This doesn't make you incompetent at your job at all. It makes you human. Counselors juggle so many moving pieces at all times. Let's normalize making mistakes. You are no less of a human or a person or a counselor because of the mistakes that you make. These mistakes do not define you. You are a human who will make real mistakes in this job. And I wish I had considered this before I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect or to say the right thing or to never let anyone down. Go back and listen to that full episode for 2 more things that I wish I knew when I was starting out. It's a good one. You nailed your interview, secured your dream job. What the heck do you do next? How do you know where to go from here? Imagine reducing your overwhelm with a guide that takes you through the step-by-step process of what needs to happen after you get the job. You don't deserve to waste your energy spinning your wheels every different direction. You've got other things to get to. Get the support you need to start your new role with confidence and clarity. Introducing the High School Counselor Kickstart course. This 8-episode private podcast will help you navigate the early years of your high school counseling career with confidence. In addition to the exclusive podcast episodes, you'll get episode transcripts, a workbook, a PD certificate, and 2 incredible bonuses that you don't want to miss: a high school counseling curriculum map and a sample needs assessment. Consider this your comprehensive survival kit for your beginning years as a high school counselor. Join us inside the High School Counselor Kickstart course by going to counselorclick.com/new-counselor today. In episode 72, I shared what not to do as a new high school counselor and what to do instead, because obviously I couldn't just leave you with a bunch of problems and no solutions. I hate when people do that. So here's one bit of advice from me. Ease into this role slowly. I know you want to dive in, take it all in, change the world overnight, but use that energy to your advantage. Here's a clip where I talk about a mistake I made in the beginning of my career. Don't take on too much all at once. I know it can be tempting to be a team player, especially when you're new at the job or when you're the new kid on the team. I feel like the better I got at my job, the more I was asked to be on committees and planning teams and feedback councils. I was asked to be on interview committees and sponsor clubs and lead this new initiative over here. In your beginning years of your career, you probably have the most energy and excitement you're ever going to have. We don't want you to wake up one day and have this flame put out because you're overcommitted to things. My practice of saying no to things really only happened for me personally once I had my first daughter. It was so much easier for me to leave work on time because I had somewhere else to be and someone else who was counting on me. But I also want to speak to those who don't have kids or who don't have a partner that they're going home to. Your boundaries are also important. You do not need to be the one who is voluntold to be here because your outside of work commitments are different from being the wife or the mom that you work with. I know that you have a life outside of work too. For all school counselors, the work-life balance is extremely necessary. I have a handful of other podcast episodes that talk about this, and I'll link those in the show notes if you're looking to get ahead of this before you're too far into this career. There'll definitely be times when you're doing a morning or an evening event. That's guaranteed to happen. Like, it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point or kind of often in your career. But balancing work and home life is absolutely important as you're getting into the swing of a new role. Keep working on it and keep adjusting for whatever season you're in. It might always be a swinging pendulum that requires attention. Like if you have too much work or too much home life, you always have to be finding that balance and readjusting. The practice of setting boundaries, no matter what season of life you're in, is so important so that you don't burn out. Like I mentioned, I'll put some extra episodes and blog posts in the show notes if you're trying to get ahead of that burnout phase before you're too deep into it. Lastly, let's get you pumped up and excited for your new job with a pep talk. This is a really popular episode because it's a great one to come back to time after time when you're feeling down or you feel that imposter syndrome sneaking in. People have told me that this pep talk was the confidence boost they needed as they embarked on a new role. So let's roll that clip. Okay, next, new counselor friend. Just because you're ripe doesn't mean you don't have amazing things to offer. You can be just as, if not more, confident in your role as a veteran counselor. Like those counselors have a lot to offer, but so do you. You have to be the one to decide on that mindset. You're most certainly trained and ready for this position. You've read case studies, you've dove into journal articles, you've spent time hashing through tough scenarios in your supervision classes with your classmates and your professors. You've got the head knowledge, so much of what you have left to learn comes from what happens on the job. And listen, you have experience there too. Give yourself some credit. None of us veterans would say we know it all. There are a million ways each day can and will go. It's not up to you to have every path forged already. You are going to live in the gray. I'll say it again. So many of the scenarios in your high school counseling job are not going to be black and white. You might not have an answer, but the veteran down the hall might not have the answer either. You will live in the gray. There will be so many situations that come up that you'll still need help figuring out. And that's the fun of it. That's one of the parts I love about this job. So you can truly be confident that you're in the right place. Every one of us has started in the same shoes as you, and we've lived to tell about it. You're as prepared as you can possibly be right now. You do have so much to offer. Someone picked you specifically for this role. Others believed in you first when they hired you, so go ahead and step into that greatness. Remember, all of these episodes and more are on the New Counselor playlist, which can be found at counselorclick.com/new counselor playlist. The specific episodes and all the resources that I talked about in this episode are listed in the show notes. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it was a confidence boost and gave you some things to think about as you're embarking on a new journey. I'm so excited for you. You are going to love being a high school counselor. Thank you for sticking around my Counselor Click world, and I hope that you can find a lot of resources that give you the confidence that you need to be a great high school counselor. I know that you will. Reach out into my DMs if you have any questions or tell me if this episode was helpful for you. I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to today's episode of High School Counseling Conversations. All the links I talked about today can be found in the show notes and also at counselorclick.com/podcast. Be sure to hit follow wherever you listen to your podcast so that you never miss a new episode. Connect with me over on Instagram. Feel free to send me a DM at counselorclick. That's CLIQUE. I'll see you next week.